Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Discovery. Damon Lynch had built his fortune on reading people, knowing when they lied, when they schemed, when they betrayed. 20 years in private security consulting had taught him that everyone had secrets, but he never imagined the darkest secret would be sleeping beside him every night. The call from his assistant came at 2:47 a.m. during his business trip to Chicago. "Mr. Lynch, your wife called. Your daughter, Emma, is at St. Mary's Hospital with an ear infection." Damon caught the first flight home to Denver, his mind racing. 6-year-old Emma had always been healthy, never even a serious cold. The 3-hour flight felt eternal as worry gnawed at him. Christine had sounded frantic on the phone, barely coherent through her tears. He burst through the hospital doors at 8 a.m., still wearing his rumpled business suit. Christine sat in the waiting room, her auburn hair disheveled, makeup smeared. Beside her sat her father, Herman Butler, a man Damon had never fully trusted despite 15 years of marriage. "Daddy," Emma's weak voice called as he entered her room. She lay pale against white sheets, her left ear bandaged. "Hey, princess, Daddy's here now." Damon kissed her forehead, his heart breaking at her fevered state. Dr. Patricia Trujillo entered, her expression grave. "Mr. Lynch, I need to speak with you privately." In the hallway, the doctor's words hit like a sledgehammer. This wasn't a natural infection. Someone deliberately placed a foreign object deep in your daughter's ear canal. It caused significant inflammation and could have permanently damaged her hearing. Damon's blood turned to ice. "What kind of object?" Dr. Trujillo's hands trembled slightly as she produced a small evidence bag. Inside was a sophisticated microtransmitter no bigger than a pill. "It's some kind of listening device. Very advanced. The police have been notified, but Mr. Lynch." She paused, studying his face. "Did you leave your daughter with someone recently?" "Yes." The word came out as a growl. "With my wife and her parents during my business trip." The doctor's expression darkened. "Mr. Lynch, placing this required medical precision. Someone held your daughter down and inserted this deep enough to avoid detection during casual examination. This was calculated." Damon stared at the device, his mind processing implications with the cold efficiency that had made him successful. Someone had used his daughter as a surveillance device. Someone with access to his home, his family, his life. "Who knew about your Chicago meeting?" Dr. Trujillo asked gently. "My wife, her parents, my business partner." Damon stopped, a terrible realization forming. Only 4 people knew the specific details of that deal. As if summoned by his thoughts, Christine appeared in the doorway. "Damon, what's wrong? You look. Come here." His voice was deadly calm. Christine approached hesitantly, her green eyes darting between Damon and the doctor. When she saw the evidence bag, her face went white. "Can you explain this?" Damon held up the transmitter. What is that?" "I don't understand." But Damon saw it. The micro-expression that lasted a split second. Recognition. Fear. Not confusion. In that instant, 20 years of reading people told him everything he needed to know. "The doctor says someone with medical knowledge placed this in Emma's ear." Damon's voice remained eerily controlled. "Someone who had access to her while I was in Chicago." Christine's lip trembled. "Are you suggesting? How could you even think?" "I'm not suggesting anything." Damon pocketed the evidence bag. "I'm stating facts. Someone used our daughter as a listening device. Someone who knew about the Chicago deal, which is worth $47 million. Dr. Trujillo cleared her throat. "I'll leave you two to discuss this. Emma will be fine, but I recommend counseling for the trauma." She looked directly at Christine. Children remember violation, even when they can't articulate it. After the doctor left, husband and wife stood in the sterile hallway, the weight of unspoken accusations hanging between them. "I would never hurt Emma," Christine whispered. "No," Damon agreed, his gray eyes boring into hers. "But you'd let someone else do it." Christine's composure cracked. "That's not." "You're wrong." "Am I?" Damon stepped closer, and Christine unconsciously retreated. Then explain why my daughter has nightmares about the man with cold hands that started exactly 3 days ago. Explain why she's been afraid to sleep in her own room. Explain why she keeps asking if the doctor game is over. Each word hit Christine like a physical blow. Her face cycled through emotions, denial, fear, guilt, and finally a flash of something that looked almost like relief. Damon, please. No. He turned toward Emma's room. I'm taking my daughter home. You can go back to your parents' house. Don't come home until I say you can. As Damon walked away, he heard Christine's whispered phone call. It didn't work. He knows something's wrong. What do we do now? Damon smiled coldly. The hunt had begun. Chapter 2. Unraveling Threads. Damon's Bentley pulled into the circular driveway of his Highlands Ranch mansion at sunset. Emma slept peacefully in her car's seat, finally free of pain thanks to antibiotics. The Victorian-style home he'd bought for Christine's 30th birthday now felt like a crime scene. Ross, I need you here. Damon spoke in his phone as he carried Emma inside. Ross Hartman had been his business partner for a decade, and the closest thing Damon had to a friend. Bring the debugging equipment. While waiting, Damon tucked Emma into the guest bedroom. He couldn't bear putting her back in her own room yet, and began his own investigation. Years of security work had taught him that amateurs always left traces. In Christine's walk-in closet, he found the first evidence, a cell phone hidden behind shoeboxes. Not a regular phone, but a burner with only 3 contacts, G, Dad, and Emergency. The text history made his blood boil. G, device placement successful. Audio quality excellent. Christine, she cried for hours. I can't do this anymore. G, remember what's at stake. Chicago deal worth more than we estimated. Christine, what about after? You promised we'd be together. G, soon, baby. Once Lynch is eliminated, everything changes. Eliminated? They weren't just stealing from him. They were planning to kill him. Ross arrived within an hour, his tall frame carrying sophisticated electronic equipment. Jesus, Damon, you look like death. What's this about? Damon showed him the transmitter and the text messages. Ross, a former Navy SEAL turned tech specialist, whistled low. Military grade. This isn't some cheating wife hiring a private investigator. Someone with serious resources is after you. Sweep the house. Everything. It took 3 hours, but they found 6 more devices. 2 in Damon's home office, 1 in the master bedroom, 1 in his car, and 2 in his personal study. The level of surveillance was extraordinary. They know everything, Ross muttered, examining a device disguised as a wall outlet. Every phone call, every meeting, every conversation with Emma. Damon's jaw clenched. How long? Based on the installation methods, I'd say 6 months minimum. 6 months. His mind raced through every private conversation, every business deal, every intimate moment with his wife. All of it recorded, analyzed, used against him. There's more, Ross said grimly. These devices have been transmitting to a location in Cherry Creek. Expensive neighborhood. Damon knew Cherry Creek well. It's where he'd first met Gerard Hancock 5 years ago at a charity gala. Gerard, the charming art dealer who'd become a family friend. Gerard, who'd been to their house dozens of times. Gerard, who'd shown unusual interest in Damon's business dealings. I want full surveillance on Gerard Hancock, Damon told Ross. Financial records, phone logs, travel history. Everything. You think he's G? I think he's a dead man. As if to confirm his suspicions, Damon's phone buzzed with a text from Christine. Please come to Dad's house. We need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Instead of responding, Damon drove to Cherry Creek and parked outside Gerard's gallery. Through the window, he could see Gerard pacing frantically, phone pressed to his ear. Even from 50 yards away, the man's body language screamed panic. Damon's phone rang. Unknown number. Lynch. His voice was ice. Mr. Lynch? A nervous voice he didn't recognize. This is Craig Durham. I work for Gerard Hancock. He asked me to call you. Put him on. He can't come to the phone right now, but he wanted me to tell you that there's been a misunderstanding about your wife. And Damon hung up and called Ross. I need backgrounds on every employee at Hancock Gallery. Also check Gerard Hancock's financial records against anyone named Craig Durham. 20 minutes later, Ross called back. Craig Durham is Gerard's accountant. But here's the interesting part. He's also Herman Butler's nephew. The pieces clicked into place. Herman Butler, Christine's father, and a retired banker with connections throughout Denver's financial district. Gerard Hancock, art dealer with cash flow problems and expensive tastes. Craig Durham, the link between them. This wasn't just about adultery. This was a carefully orchestrated conspiracy involving his wife's family, her lover, and possibly others. They'd used his daughter as a surveillance device to steal his business secrets and plan his murder. Damon smiled grimly as he watched Gerard through the gallery window. The man was sweating despite the cool evening air, constantly checking his watch and phone. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Christine. Damon, please. Emma needs both her parents. Can't we work this out? He typed back. Come home tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone. We'll work everything out. As he drove home, Damon's mind was already 3 steps ahead. These people had made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated him. They thought he was just another wealthy businessman, soft, trusting, vulnerable. They were about to learn that Damon Lynch had earned his fortune in the shadows, where mercy was weakness and betrayal was paid for in blood. Chapter 3. The Banker's Gambit. At 6 a.m. the next morning, Damon sat in his home office reviewing financial records while Emma ate breakfast with a nanny he'd hired overnight, a thoroughly vetted former FBI agent named Rebecca Hall. He would never again leave his daughter's safety to chance. The previous night's research had revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. Herman Butler hadn't retired from banking. He'd been forced out after an internal investigation into unauthorized account access. Gerard Hancock's gallery was bleeding money, kept afloat by questionable loans. Craig Durham had been quietly moving money between offshore accounts for both men. But the real revelation came when Damon accessed his own bank records. Over the past 6 months, someone had been making small withdrawals from his accounts. Never enough to trigger alerts, but totaling nearly $300,000. The money had been filtered through a complex web of accounts before landing in a Cayman Islands bank. They've been bleeding me dry, he murmured, studying the transfer patterns. His phone rang. It was Spencer Gomez, his security company's forensic accountant. Damon, you need to see this. I ran the financial analysis you requested on the Butler family. Spencer's voice was tight with excitement. Herman Butler has been planning this for years. He's got detailed records going back to your wedding. What kind of records? Everything. Your business deals, personal habits, even psychological profiles. It's like he's been studying you as a mark since day one. The implications hit Damon like a physical blow. His marriage hadn't just gone bad. It had been a setup from the beginning. 15 years of his life, his daughter's birth, every intimate moment. All of it orchestrated. Spencer, I need you to do something for me. Can you trace the exact source of the listening device? These things have serial numbers, manufacturing records. Already on it. Give me an hour. Damon hung up and walked to the kitchen where Emma was playing with her cereal. Despite everything, she was smiling. The resilience of childhood was remarkable. Daddy, when is Mommy coming home? Tonight, sweetheart. But first, Daddy has some work to do. At 10 a.m., Ross arrived with a thick folder and a grim expression. You're not going to like this. The surveillance photos were devastating. Gerard and Christine had been meeting regularly for over a year, but not just for romantic encounters. The photos showed them with Herman Butler, Craig Durham, and 2 other men Damon didn't recognize at various locations around Denver. It gets worse, Ross continued. I tracked down the listening device's serial number. It was purchased by a company called Mountain Security Solutions. Never heard of them. That's because it's a shell company. Guess who's listed as the primary shareholder? Damon's jaw tightened. Herman Butler. Gets better. Mountain Security Solutions has contracts with 3 major Denver banks, including First National, where your business accounts are held. The final piece clicked. Herman Butler had used his banking connections to establish a security company, which gave him legitimate access to surveillance equipment and inside information about high-value targets. Damon wasn't their first victim. He was just their biggest score. There's one more thing, Ross said quietly. I found evidence of at least 4 other similar operations over the past decade. Wealthy men, all of them had wives or girlfriends connected to Herman Butler's extended network. What happened to them? Ross opened another folder, revealing newspaper clippings. 2 died in accidents. 1 supposedly committed suicide during a messy divorce. The 4th disappeared entirely, declared dead after 7 years. Damon stared at the photos of dead men who'd trusted the wrong people. Men like him, who'd built wealth and then had it stolen by those closest to them. They're not just thieves, he said quietly. They're serial killers. At 3 p.m., Spencer called back with more devastating news. Damon, the Chicago deal, they know every detail. I found evidence that Gerard Hancock has been in contact with your competitors. If that deal falls through, you're looking at bankruptcy. Can you save it? Maybe. But I need to know, how far are you willing to go? Damon looked out his window at Emma playing in the garden, protected by Rebecca Hull's watchful presence. His daughter deserved better than a father who rolled over when threatened. Whatever it takes. That evening at 7:45 p.m., Damon sat in his living room, a glass of bourbon in hand. The house was quiet. Emma was at a sleepover with the daughter of one of his most trusted employees, safely away from what was about to unfold. At exactly 8 p.m., Christine's car pulled into the driveway. She entered the house cautiously, her usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. "Where's Emma?" she asked. "Safe." Damon gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." Christine perched on the edge of the chair, her hands clasped tightly. "Damon, about the device. I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, let me tell you what I know." Damon's voice was conversational, almost friendly. "I know about Gerard. I know about your father's company. I know about the money you've been stealing. I know about the Chicago deal." Christine's face went white, but she tried to maintain her composure. "You're jumping to conclusions. I know about Mountain Security Solutions. I know about the other victims. I know about the murders." The last word hung in the air like a death sentence. Christine's facade crumbled completely. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. "When Dad first suggested it, he said we'd just take some money and disappear. Then Gerard got involved, and things got complicated. Complicated." Damon's voice turned deadly. "You put a listening device in our daughter's ear. You violated a 6-year-old child to steal from me." Tears streamed down Christine's face. "I never wanted to hurt Emma. I told them it was too much, but they said if I didn't cooperate, they'd kill you anyway and make it look like a business rival did it. So you chose to betray me instead of warn me. I chose to keep you alive." Christine's composure snapped. "Do you think this was easy? Living with the guilt, pretending everything was normal?" Damon stood slowly, his gray eyes boring into hers. "You want to know what's not easy? Explaining to my daughter why Mommy hurt her. Rebuilding a business after your family tried to destroy it. Learning that my entire marriage was a lie. What are you going to do?" Damon smiled, and for the first time, Christine saw the man who'd built his fortune in the shadows of private security. "I'm going to give you and your conspirators exactly what you deserve." Chapter 4. The Professional's Preparation. 3 days after Christine's confession, Damon sat in his private office reviewing personnel files. The room had been completely debugged and secured, making it the only place in his house where he could plan freely. His laptop displayed detailed dossiers on each member of the conspiracy, compiled by his team of investigators. Ross entered carrying coffee and a secure phone. "The Chicago deal? Secured. Spencer managed to convince our partners that the leak came from their side." Damon closed the laptop. "They're actually offering better terms now, out of guilt. And the targets?" Damon opened a leather folder containing 5 photographs. Herman Butler, Gerard Hancock, Craig Durham, and 2 other men, Sean Archer and Byron Frazier, who'd been identified as muscle for the operation. Herman Butler is the architect. Take him down, the rest fall apart. Damon's finger traced Butler's photo. "But I want them all to understand what happens when you touch my family." Ross studied the photos with professional interest. Both men had worked in private security long enough to know that some problems couldn't be solved through legal channels. "What's the timeline?" 3 weeks. I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves, then pull it tight all at once." Damon's phone buzzed with a text from Christine. "Please let me see Emma. I'm staying at Dad's house and going crazy." Instead of responding, Damon called his lawyer, Clarence Kelly, a man who specialized in complex divorce cases involving hidden assets. "Clarence, I need a complete forensic audit of my wife's family. Financial records, property ownership, everything going back 15 years. Preparing for divorce proceedings? Preparing for war." That afternoon, Damon drove to an industrial warehouse in Commerce City where he kept specialized equipment from his security consulting days. Most of his clients had been legitimate corporations, but some assignments had required tools that existed in legal gray areas. The warehouse contained everything from surveillance equipment to more exotic items, the kind of hardware that could make problems disappear permanently. Damon had hoped never to access this arsenal again, but his family's safety demanded exceptions to his usual moral boundaries. He selected several items: untraceable communication devices, miniature cameras, financial tracking software, and other tools that would level the playing field against his enemies. His secure phone rang. It was Frederick Dodson, a contact from his military contracting days who now operated private intelligence services. "Lynch? Heard you might need some specialized assistance." "Maybe. Can you provide background on a man named Gerard Hancock?" "I need everything. Financial, personal, criminal history, if any. Give me 48 hours. That evening, Damon picked up Emma from Rebecca Hall's apartment. The nanny had been invaluable, providing security while also serving as a trauma counselor for Emma's recent experiences. "How is she?" Damon asked as Emma played with toys in the next room. "Resilient. Children are remarkable that way. But she's been asking about her mother." "I know. I'm trying to protect her from the worst of this." Rebecca studied Damon's face. "And what happens when the protection requires actions that can't be undone?" The question hung between them. Rebecca had been FBI long enough to recognize when someone was planning something that crossed legal lines. "My daughter's safety comes first," Damon said finally. "Everything else is secondary." That night, after Emma was asleep, Damon received a call from Spencer with disturbing news. They're accelerating their timeline. Gerard Hancock just booked a flight to the Cayman Islands for next week. If he reaches those offshore accounts, the money disappears forever. "How much are we talking about?" "Based on my analysis, close to $2 million stolen from you and at least 3 other victims over the past 5 years. Damon felt his anger crystallize into cold determination. They weren't just thieves. They were predators who'd perfected their system over years of practice. "Spencer, I need you to freeze every account you can identify. Use whatever legal mechanisms necessary." "Already in progress." "But Damon, once we make these moves, they'll know we're onto them. They might run, or worse, they might accelerate their plans for you." "Good. Let them come." The next morning, Damon received the call he'd been expecting. Herman Butler's voice was carefully controlled, but Damon could hear the underlying tension. "Damon, I think we need to talk. Man to man." "About what, Herman?" "About Christine. About the family. About misunderstandings that have gotten out of hand." "I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at my house tonight. 7 o'clock. Just you and me." Damon smiled grimly. They were finally ready to make their move. "I'll be there." After hanging up, Damon called Ross. "They're accelerating. Butler wants a face-to-face tonight." "It's a trap." "Of course it is. Which is why we're going to be ready for them." As Damon prepared for the evening's confrontation, he thought about the men who'd underestimated him. They saw a successful businessman and assumed that meant soft, naive, unprepared for real violence. They were about to learn that Damon Lynch had earned his fortune in darker corners of the world, where survival depended on being more ruthless than your enemies. Tonight, the hunt would begin in earnest. Chapter 5. Setting the Trap. Herman Butler's house in Cherry Hills Village looked like something from a magazine, sprawling ranch style with manicured gardens and a circular driveway lined with expensive cars. As Damon pulled up at 7 p.m., he noted the positioning. Gerard Hancock's BMW, Craig Durham's Mercedes, and a black SUV he didn't recognize. They'd brought backup. Good. He planned for that. Ross's voice crackled through Damon's nearly invisible earpiece. "I've got eyes on all exits. 3 men inside besides Butler, Gerard, Durham, and someone new. Big guy looks military. That'll be Sean Archer. Former mercenary, works private security now. Damon checked his concealed recording device one final time. Remember, I need them to confess on record before we move to Phase 2. Damon walked to the front door, his movements relaxed and confident. He'd learned long ago that appearing unthreatened often made opponents overconfident. Herman Butler answered the door personally, his politician's smile firmly in place. At 62, he still carried himself with the authority of a man who'd controlled millions in banking assets. Damon, come in, come in. Thank you for agreeing to meet. The living room had been carefully arranged. Herman sat behind a large oak desk, a power position. Gerard Hancock lounged in a leather chair to the left, trying to look casual but failing to hide his nervousness. Craig Durham sat rigid in a straight-back chair, sweat beading his forehead despite the cool evening. The fourth man stood near the window, Sean Archer, exactly as Ross had described. 6'3", military-bearing, the kind of man who solved problems with violence. Drink, Herman offered, gesturing to a well-stocked bar. I'm fine. Damon took the chair opposite Herman, noting the positioning put Archer behind him. Amateur hour. What did you want to discuss? Herman's expression grew serious. My daughter made some serious accusations about listening devices, financial irregularities, frankly, some pretty wild conspiracy theories. Are they theories? Of course they are. Gerard finally spoke, his voice too loud. This whole thing is a misunderstanding that's gotten completely out of hand. Damon turned to study Gerard. Mid-40s, soft around the middle, the kind of man who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. Explain the misunderstanding. Gerard exchanged glances with Herman. The device your daughter, the one found in her ear, it was placed there by accident. Accident. Damon's voice was dangerously quiet. Medical confusion, Craig Durham interjected, speaking for the first time. A mix-up at the hospital during a routine examination. Damon almost laughed. They were really going to try to gaslight him. So you're saying Dr. Patricia Trujillo, a board-certified pediatric specialist, somehow confused a sophisticated listening device for standard medical equipment. The men exchanged nervous looks. Herman leaned forward, his banker's instincts telling him to cut losses. Damon, let's speak plainly. You're a successful man. Sometimes success makes enemies. It's possible someone planted that device to cause problems in your family. Someone with medical knowledge and access to my daughter. Exactly, which rules out anyone in this room. Damon pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. Christine's confession from 3 nights ago. Her voice filled the room. When Dad first suggested it, he said we'd just take some money and disappear. Then Gerard got involved, and things got complicated. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sean Archer's hand moved closer to his jacket. She was emotional, Herman said carefully. Confused. You can't take anything she said seriously. She also mentioned other victims. For men over the past decade. 2 died in accidents. Now Gerard stood up, his composure finally cracking. You're fishing. You don't have any real evidence. Don't I? Damon's smile was predatory. Mountain Security Solutions. Shell Company established 3 years ago with Herman Butler as primary shareholder. Serial number VK 4471. X on the listening device. Purchased by Mountain Security 2 months ago. Craig Durham's face went pale. How could you possibly know? Because I'm better at this than you are. Herman Butler stood slowly, his politician's mask slipping to reveal something uglier underneath. You're right, of course. But it doesn't matter. Why not? Because you're not leaving this house alive. Sean Archer stepped forward, his hand inside his jacket. But instead of drawing a weapon, he produced a small device and pressed a button. The lights in the room dimmed, and Damon heard a subtle electronic hum. Signal jammer, Archer explained. Your friends outside just lost communication. Damon's expression didn't change. Did they? Through the window, 3 vehicles suddenly surrounded the house. Black SUVs with tinted windows. Men in tactical gear poured out, moving with military precision. Herman Butler's confidence evaporated. What the hell? You made one critical mistake, Damon said conversationally as the sounds of forced entry echoed from other parts of the house. You assumed I was some soft businessman who'd walk into your trap unprepared. Ross's voice came through Damon's earpiece, clear despite the jammer. Military-grade equipment has its advantages. All targets secured. The living room door burst open as Ross entered with two other men, Frederick Dodson and another operator Damon recognized from his military contracting days. Gerard tried to run, but Frederick tackled him before he reached the hallway. Craig Durham simply sat frozen, apparently too terrified to move. Gentlemen, Damon stood, brushing off his jacket. You wanted to have a conversation about my family. Now we're going to have that conversation properly. Herman Butler's face was ashen. You can't do this. We have rights. You gave up your rights when you tortured my daughter. Damon's voice turned deadly cold. When you stole from me. When you planned to murder me. Sean Archer reached for his weapon, but found himself staring down the barrels of 3 assault rifles. He slowly raised his hands. Smart man, Frederick commented. Damon walked to Herman's desk and sat down, appropriating the power position. Now, let's discuss exactly how this is going to work. You're going to return every penny you've stolen, from me and from your other victims. You're going to provide complete records of your operations. And then, he paused, studying each terrified face. Then we're going to discuss what happens to people who hurt children. Chapter 6, The Gathering Storm. The abandoned warehouse in Commerce City had been Damon's backup facility for years, a place where sensitive conversations could happen without interruption. Now it served as an interrogation center for the 5 men who destroyed his family. Each conspirator was secured in a separate room, unable to communicate with the others. Psychological isolation was always more effective than physical threats, though Damon wasn't ruling out the latter. Ross emerged from Herman Butler's room carrying a laptop and several file folders. He's talking. Full confession, financial records, everything. Says he wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? Immunity in exchange for information about their network. Turns out this operation is bigger than we thought. Damon studied the files Ross had brought. Bank records showed a complex web of theft spanning 7 years and involving 12 victims. All wealthy men who'd been systematically targeted, robbed, and in 4 cases murdered. How much total? Conservative estimate? $15 million. But that's just the liquid assets. They've also been acquiring property through shell companies, using stolen identities to establish credit lines, even running insurance fraud schemes. The scope was staggering. This wasn't just a family of thieves. It was an organized criminal enterprise that had been operating with impunity for years. What about the others? Gerard is trying to blame everything on Herman. Says he was just following orders, didn't know about the murders. Ross's expression was disgusted. Craig Durham is claiming he was just doing bookkeeping, completely innocent. And Archer, professional to the end, won't say a word without his lawyer. Damon walked to the window, overlooking the warehouse floor. In the past 18 hours, his life had changed completely. He'd discovered his marriage was a fraud, his wife was a criminal, and his daughter had been tortured as part of an elaborate theft scheme. The old Damon might have turned everything over to the FBI and trusted the justice system. But the old Damon hadn't seen his daughter violated by the people he'd trusted most. His secure phone rang. It was Clarence Kelly, his attorney. Damon, I've completed the forensic audit you requested. You need to see this immediately. Bad news. Catastrophic news. Your wife has been systematically transferring marital assets for over 2 years. The house, your investment accounts, even Emma's college fund. It's all been leveraged as collateral for loans that went directly to offshore accounts. Damon closed his eyes. How much? Total exposure? You're looking at bankruptcy unless we can recover the assets quickly. And Damon, there's something else. Christine filed for divorce yesterday. She's claiming you threatened her and abandoned Emma. She's asking for full custody and spousal support. The final insult. They'd stolen his money, tortured his daughter, and now they want to take her away permanently. She's also filed a restraining order, Clarence continued. Claims you're dangerous and unstable. The hearing is tomorrow morning. Damon ended the call and stood silent for several minutes, processing the magnitude of their betrayal. They hadn't just planned to rob him. They designed a systematic destruction of his entire life. Ross appeared beside him. Problem? They're trying to take Emma. Ross's expression darkened. He'd seen Damon's relationship with his daughter, knew that Emma was the only thing that mattered to him. What do you need? Time. And evidence that will destroy them in court. How much time? 6 hours. The custody hearing is at 9 a.m. Ross nodded grimly. We'll get what you need. Over the next 3 hours, Damon's team extracted confessions from each conspirator. The methods weren't gentle, but they were effective. Herman Butler broke first, providing detailed records of the entire operation. Gerard Hancock followed, desperate to minimize his own culpability. Craig Durham, faced with evidence of his central role in the financial fraud, agreed to cooperate fully. Only Sean Archer remained silent, but his participation was documented by the others' testimony. By midnight, Damon had everything he needed: recorded confessions, financial records, documentation of 12 separate criminal schemes, and evidence that would not only clear his name, but destroy his enemies in court. But legal victory wasn't enough. These people had hurt his daughter. At 3 a.m., Damon sat alone with Herman Butler in the warehouse's main office. Butler looked haggard, his earlier confidence replaced by desperate fear. I've given you everything, Butler pleaded. Confessions, records, account numbers. I've cooperated completely. Yes, you have, Damon agreed. Which brings us to the final matter. What final matter? Damon leaned forward. You torture my daughter. You held down a 6-year-old child and violated her ear canal with a medical instrument. Butler's face went white. That wasn't my idea. Gerard insisted we needed audio surveillance. You were the one with medical connections. You were the one who arranged for the device placement. I thought it would just be uncomfortable. I didn't know it would cause an infection. Damon studied the man who'd orchestrated his family's destruction. Do you have children, Herman? 2 daughters. You know that. How would you feel if someone did to them what you did to Emma? Butler began to cry. Please, I'll do anything to make this right. I'll return every penny, testify against the others, whatever you want. I know you will, but that's not enough. Damon stood and walked to a steel cabinet, withdrawing a small medical kit. You see, Herman, I believe in proportional justice. You used medical knowledge to hurt my daughter, so we're going to use medical knowledge to hurt you. What are you talking about? Nothing permanent, nothing that will kill you. But you're going to experience exactly what Emma experienced, only without anesthesia. The next 2 hours broke Herman Butler completely. By dawn, he was a sobbing wreck who would have confessed to anything to make the pain stop. At 7 a.m., Damon walked out of the warehouse, carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would destroy his enemies in court. Behind him, 5 broken men waited for the FBI agents who would arrive in exactly 1 hour, tipped off by an anonymous call about a major financial fraud operation. Emma would be safe. His business would recover. His enemies would spend decades in federal prison. But the real satisfaction came from knowing that each of them now understood what it felt like to be completely powerless, completely violated, completely at the mercy of someone who didn't care about their pain. Justice, Damon reflected, had many faces. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. The Douglas County Courthouse was unusually crowded for a 9 a.m. custody hearing. Damon arrived with Clarence Kelly and a briefcase containing evidence that would change everything. Across the courtroom, Christine sat with her attorney, a sharp-looking woman named Jennifer Vance who specialized in high-asset divorces. Christine looked haggard, her usual polished appearance replaced by nervous energy. She'd clearly been crying, her makeup imperfect despite obvious attempts to repair it. Judge Patricia Monroe entered, a stern woman in her 50s known for her no-nonsense approach to family law. This is an emergency custody hearing in the matter of Lynch versus Lynch. Ms. Vance, you've alleged immediate danger to the minor child. Present your case. Jennifer Vance stood confidently. Your Honor, my client has evidence that her husband has become increasingly unstable and dangerous. Yesterday, he threatened her family and disappeared with their daughter for over 12 hours without explanation. Mr. Kelly? Clarence Kelly rose slowly, his expression grave. Your Honor, my client has been investigating a criminal conspiracy involving his wife and her family. What we've discovered will shock this court. That's a serious allegation, Counselor. Indeed it is. Clarence opened his briefcase and withdrew a stack of documents. I'd like to present evidence that Mrs. Lynch and her co-conspirators have been conducting an elaborate fraud scheme targeting wealthy men for robbery and murder. Jennifer Vance shot to her feet. Objection. This is a custody hearing, not a criminal trial. Sustained, but I'll allow limited presentation if it directly relates to the child's welfare. Clarence activated a laptop connected to the courtroom's display system. Your Honor, 3 days ago, the minor child Emma Lynch was taken to the hospital with a severe ear infection. What the doctors discovered was not a natural infection, but the result of someone deliberately placing a listening device deep in her ear canal. Christine's face went white as medical photographs appeared on the screen, showing the extracted transmitter. The device required medical knowledge to place correctly and was sophisticated enough to transmit audio for weeks without detection. Investigation revealed it was part of a comprehensive surveillance operation against Mr. Lynch, orchestrated by his wife and her father. Judge Monroe leaned forward, studying the evidence. These are serious allegations. Do you have proof of Mrs. Lynch's involvement? Yes, Your Honor. Clarence played the audio recording of Christine's confession. Her voice filled the courtroom. When Dad first suggested it, he said we'd just take some money and disappear. The recording continued for 10 minutes, documenting the entire conspiracy. By the end, Christine was sobbing quietly while her attorney sat in stunned silence. There's more, Clarence continued. Financial records show systematic theft of marital assets totaling over $2 million. Phone records document Mrs. Lynch's affair with Gerard Hancock, who has been identified as the operations field coordinator. Judge Monroe's expression grew increasingly severe. Mrs. Lynch, did you participate in placing this device in your daughter's ear? Christine could barely speak. I didn't want to. They said if I didn't help, they'd kill Damon anyway. So you chose to facilitate the torture of a 6-year-old child rather than contact authorities? I was scared. Of whom? My father, Gerard. They said they'd killed other people who didn't cooperate. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Monroe banged her gavel for silence. Mr. Kelly, where are these co-conspirators now? In federal custody, Your Honor. They were arrested this morning on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. Jennifer Vance finally found her voice. Your Honor, even if these allegations are true, my client was clearly a victim of coercion. A victim who chose to torture her own daughter rather than protect her. Judge Monroe interrupted. Mrs. Lynch, you understand that I must immediately order a psychological evaluation? Yes, Your Honor, and that pending the outcome of criminal proceedings, you will have no contact with the minor child? Christine broke down completely. Please, she's all I have left. You should have considered that before you violated her trust and safety. Judge Monroe turned to Damon. Mr. Lynch, I'm granting you temporary sole custody of Emma Lynch. Mrs. Lynch will have supervised visitation only after completing court-ordered psychological evaluation and cooperating fully with federal authorities. As the judge's gavel fell, Christine collapsed in her chair, her world destroyed as completely as she'd tried to destroy Damon's. Outside the courthouse, Damon found Emma waiting with Rebecca Hall in his car. She ran to him with the uncomplicated joy of childhood, unaware that her world had just been permanently altered. Daddy, did you win? Yes, Princess. I won. Does that mean Mommy can't hurt my ear anymore? The question hit Damon like a physical blow. In her 6-year-old way, Emma had understood exactly what had happened to her. No one will ever hurt you again, he promised, holding her tightly. Daddy will make sure of that. That afternoon, Damon received a call from FBI agent Randy Stewart, who was heading the federal investigation. Mr. Lynch, I need to thank you. The evidence you provided has broken open a case we've been working for 3 years. We've now linked your wife's family to at least 15 separate criminal enterprises. What happens next? Full prosecution. Based on the confessions and financial evidence, we're looking at life sentences for Herman Butler of Gerard Hancock. Your wife? That depends on how much she cooperates. Damon felt a cold satisfaction. And the other victims? We're working to recover assets and provide restitution. Your actions may have saved several other families from destruction. As Damon hung up, he reflected on the strange justice of the situation. In trying to destroy him, his enemies had exposed themselves completely. Their greed and arrogance had been their downfall. Emma would grow up without her mother, but she'd also grow up without the threat of people who viewed her as nothing more than a tool for theft and manipulation. That evening, as Damon tucked Emma into bed in her own room, finally safe again, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Daddy, why did Mommy hurt me?" Damon chose his words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices. It doesn't mean she didn't love you, but it means she chose something else over keeping you safe. Like choosing money over me? The insight was startling in a 6-year-old. Something like that. Will I see her again? Maybe someday, when you're older and if you want to. But for now, it's just you and me. Emma nodded solemnly, then brightened. That's okay. You're the best daddy in the world. As Damon watched his daughter fall asleep, he felt a peace he hadn't experienced in months. The hunt was over. His enemies were destroyed. His family, what remained of it, was safe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, justice had been served. Chapter 8. Consequences Unfold. 6 months later, Damon sat in his rebuilt home office, reviewing quarterly reports while Emma played nearby. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, despite everything that had happened. Or perhaps because of it. The doorbell rang, and Rebecca Hall, now Emma's full-time nanny and Damon's head of security, answered it. She returned moments later with an envelope marked personal and confidential. Inside was a handwritten letter from Christine, postmarked from the Federal Detention Center in Florence, Colorado. Damon, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this. I've been in counseling for 4 months now, trying to understand how I became the person who could hurt our daughter. The truth is, I've been planning this since before we got married. Dad recruited me specifically to target you. I was supposed to marry you, learn your business, and then disappear with a substantial settlement after a few years. But then Emma was born, and everything changed. I fell in love with her and with the life we'd built. I kept putting off the plan, making excuses to Dad and Gerard. They finally gave me an ultimatum. Cooperate completely or watch them kill you and frame me for it. I thought I was protecting you by helping them. I see now how wrong I was. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that Emma is the only thing I ever did right, and you're the only man I ever actually loved. Please tell her, when she's older, tell her I'm sorry. Christine. Damon folded the letter and placed it in his desk drawer. Perhaps someday Emma would want to read it, when she was old enough to understand the complexity of human nature. His phone rang. It was Spencer Gomez with the quarterly financial report. Good news across the board. The Chicago deal generated even more revenue than projected. Asset recovery from the Butler operation is nearly complete, and the new security consulting contracts are exceeding expectations. What about the civil suits? Settled. The victims' families are receiving full restitution plus punitive damages. Several have already expressed interest in hiring our security services. It was ironic. Being targeted by criminals had actually improved Damon's business reputation. Potential clients viewed him as someone who could handle serious threats and protect what mattered most. Ross entered the office carrying Emma's backpack and school artwork. How was school today, Princess? Great. I got an A on my science project about sound waves. Emma beamed as she showed Damon her graded report. The innocent joy in her face still amazed him. Children's resilience was remarkable. With proper counseling and a secure environment, Emma had processed her trauma and moved forward with life. Mr. Lynch, Rebecca appeared in the doorway. Agent Stewart is here to see you. FBI agent Randy Stewart had become a regular visitor over the past months, coordinating the complex investigation and prosecution. His presence usually meant developments in the case. Good news or bad news? Damon asked as Stewart entered. Mixed. Herman Butler died in federal custody yesterday. Heart attack. Damon felt no emotion at the news. Natural causes? The autopsy will determine that. But he'd been receiving threats from other inmates who didn't appreciate child abusers. And the others? Gerard Hancock pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. Life without parole. Craig Durham is cooperating fully. He'll serve 15 to 20. Sean Archer got 25 to life. What about Christine? Stewart's expression grew uncomfortable. That's the complicated part. Her cooperation has been invaluable, and her attorney is pushing for a reduced sentence based on duress and coercion. How reduced? 10 to 15 years, with possibility of parole in 7. Damon considered this. 7 years would make Emma 13 when her mother was released, old enough to decide for herself whether she wanted contact. There's something else, Stewart continued. We've identified 3 more criminal networks using similar methods. Your case broke open an entire ecosystem of organized family fraud. The Justice Department wants to offer you a consulting contract. What kind of consulting? Helping other victims, developing countermeasures, training investigators. The pay is substantial, and it would allow you to prevent what happened to Emma from happening to other children. The offer was tempting. Damon had always found satisfaction in protecting people, and this would give him a platform to do it systematically. I'll consider it. After Stewart left, Damon found Emma in her playroom, working on a puzzle. She looked up as he entered, her face bright with innocent happiness. Daddy, are you sad about something? Why do you ask? You have your thinking face on, the one you get when you're solving problems. Damon sat beside her on the floor. I was offered a new job. It would help other families who had bad things happen to them, like what happened to us. Similar things. Emma considered this seriously. Would it help other kids like me? Yes. Then you should do it. Kids shouldn't be hurt by grown-ups. The simple moral clarity of a 6-year-old put the decision in perspective. Damon had the resources, skills, and motivation to prevent other families from experiencing what they'd endured. You're right. I should do it. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Damon stood in his study looking at a wall of photographs. Images of the victims Herman Butler's network had targeted over the years. 15 families destroyed, from men murdered, dozens of children traumatized. His own experience had been terrible, but it had also given him the tools to ensure justice was served. Not just legal justice, but the kind of comprehensive consequences that would deter future predators. He thought about Christine, alone in her cell, finally understanding the full cost of her choices. About Gerard Hancock, facing decades in maximum security. About Herman Butler, whose heart had finally given out under the weight of his crimes. They'd thought they were hunting him, but in the end, he'd been the predator. The skills that had made him successful in private security, patience, planning, ruthless execution, had served him well in personal warfare. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Lynch, my name is Sarah Chun. My husband was murdered by people who sound like the ones who targeted you. Agent Stewart gave me your number. Can you help? Damon smiled grimly as he typed his response. I'll be in touch tomorrow. We'll make sure they pay for what they did. The hunt never really ended. It just found new prey. Chapter 9. The New Order. 1 year after the hospital discovery that changed everything, Damon stood before a Senate subcommittee in Washington, D.C., presenting his report on organized family fraud networks. The past 12 months had transformed him from victim to advocate, and his consulting work with the FBI had helped dismantle criminal operations in 7 states. Senator Joan Randolph, the subcommittee chair, reviewed his findings with obvious concern. Mr. Lynch, your testimony suggests these networks are far more sophisticated than previously understood. Yes, Senator. They operate like intelligence agencies, recruiting assets, establishing long-term deep cover, conducting systematic surveillance. The network that targeted my family had been operational for over a decade and had generated an estimated $40 million in stolen assets. And the human cost? Damon's expression hardened. 17 confirmed deaths. 32 children psychologically traumatized. Hundreds of families financially destroyed. These aren't opportunistic criminals. They're predators who've industrialized betrayal. After the hearing, Damon flew back to Denver, where Emma waited with Rebecca Hall at their new home in Greenwood Village. The old house held too many painful memories. This one was a fresh start, equipped with state-of-the-art security systems. "How was Washington?" Emma asked as they sat down for dinner. At 7, she was developing into a remarkably perceptive child, perhaps aged by her experiences but not broken by them. "Productive. We convinced some important people to take these crimes seriously." "Does that mean other kids won't get hurt?" "Fewer kids will get hurt. We can't prevent all bad things, but we can make them harder to do." Emma nodded solemnly. "Good. Nobody should have their ear hurt like mine was." Later that evening, Damon received a video call from Agent Stewart. "Got some news on the Christine situation. Good or bad? Depends on your perspective. She's agreed to testify against 3 more networks we've identified. Full cooperation in exchange for a transfer to minimum security. Timeline for release. Still 7 years minimum." "But Damon, there's something else." She's been writing to Emma. Damon's jaw tightened. "I told the prison. The letters aren't being delivered. They're being held per your instructions. But she's written over 50 letters in the past 6 months. Her counselor says it's part of her therapy process." "What do they say?" "Apologies mostly. Stories about Emma as a baby. Expressions of regret. Nothing manipulative or inappropriate." Damon considered this development. Part of him wanted to ensure Christine never had contact with Emma again. But another part recognized that Emma might someday want to understand her mother's perspective. "Keep holding them. When Emma's older, if she asks, I'll consider sharing them selectively." "Fair enough." "Oh, and Damon, the consulting contract we discussed? State Department is interested in expanding it internationally. Seems these family fraud networks are operating in Europe and Asia too." The scope continued to expand. What had started as personal revenge was becoming a crusade against an entire criminal ecosystem. That night, as Damon tucked Emma into bed, she asked the question that had become routine: "Tell me about Mommy when she was good." It was a ritual they developed with Emma's therapist, balancing the reality of Christine's crimes with acknowledgement that she had once been capable of love. "Before you were born, Mommy and I went to Paris for our anniversary. She spent hours in the Louvre, looking at paintings. She said art helped her understand beauty in the world. Was she really bad then? But did she become bad later?" The question was becoming more sophisticated as Emma grew older. "I think she was always capable of bad choices, but being your mommy brought out the good in her. That's why you're so special. You help someone be better than they naturally were. But not better enough to keep me safe." "No, not better enough for that." Emma was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad you kept me safe, Daddy. I always will, Princess. That's my job." As Emma drifted off to sleep, Damon reflected on the transformation his life had undergone. A year ago, he'd been a successful businessman with a seemingly perfect family. Now he was a widower by choice, a single father by necessity, and a crusader by calling. His phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Frederick Dodson. New network identified in Miami. 3 families targeted. Request immediate consultation. Damon smiled grimly as he typed his response. En route tomorrow. Forward all intelligence. The hunt continued. It would always continue. But now he wasn't just protecting his own family. He was protecting families he'd never met, children he'd never see, people who would never know how close they'd come to destruction. In destroying his enemies, Damon had discovered his true purpose. He was no longer just a businessman who'd been betrayed. He was a guardian who understood that some people were predators, and predators only understood one language: overwhelming force applied without mercy or hesitation. His daughter was safe. His fortune was restored. His enemies were dead or imprisoned. But most importantly, he learned the truth about himself. Damon Lynch was not a man who forgave. He was not a man who forgot. He was a man who ensured that betrayal carried consequences so severe that others would think twice before targeting the innocent. The war against those who preyed on families would never end. But for the first time in his life, Damon Lynch was exactly where he belonged, hunting monsters who disguised themselves as human beings. Emma slept peacefully in her secure room, protected by systems and people who would die before letting harm reach her. And in his study, her father planned the next phase of a campaign that would make the predators of the world understand a simple truth. Touch a child, destroy a family, betray the innocent, and face the consequences without mercy, without escape, and without hope of redemption. The hunt never ended. It only found new prey. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.